I'm so glad you could join me today because we're going to be talking about something very fundamental and very important. You've been taught to pay attention to your thoughts, to believe they're important, but what if that constant mental stream isn't actually your intelligence? It's a synthetic system hijacking your energy and distorting your perception. This is Amara Strand. Welcome back to my podcast. Today, we're breaking down the architecture of your mind because you don't just have one, you have two. A natural mind designed for effortless clarity and a synthetic overlay that runs interference, burns through your energy, and tries to convince you that it is you talking to yourself. In this episode, you'll learn how to spot which one is running your reality and what happens when you stop outsourcing your authority to the wrong voice. So which mind are you running? You think a lot, and it's just part of life, right? The world is so complex, you've got to make the right decisions to navigate your way through it, and there are a lot of things to think about, and that seems logical. What most people don't realize is they have two distinct minds operating, not different moods or perspectives, two fundamentally different internal communication systems. And chances are you're unconsciously running the energy-intensive one all day long without even knowing there's an alternative. Your natural mind is your original native design. It's integrated seamlessly with your entire system, your body, your non-physical perception, your deeper intelligence. Think of it as the mind you were born with, designed to work perfectly and effortlessly with your human vehicle. It doesn't create internal conflict, and it barely uses any energy to run. Your synthetic mind is something else entirely. Picture it like electrical wiring that was jerry-rigged into your house after your house was built. It works, but it's not part of the elegant original design. It sits on top of your native system, drawing massive amounts of power while creating interference with everything else. It's the mind that is constantly talking to you, tries to convince you of things, and creates elaborate scenarios and debates. All that mental churning, that's the synthetic mind activity. The thing is, you've been trained to pay attention to your synthetic mind because it's loud and it's insistent. But more than that, it speaks in the language you recognize and prioritize. And what I mean by that is it uses verbal language. And this is what you've come to call thinking, that constant staccato of words and commentary running through your head. Your natural mind communicates differently. It works through direct and complete knowing, holistic knowing, clarity that just appears without explanation or process. It doesn't rely on verbal language, which is one of the reasons you've learned to dismiss it as less important or less real. But your reliance on the synthetic mind and your habit of letting it run all the time burns through your resources. You're allocating a great deal of energy to sustain a system that was never meant to be your primary way of processing reality. So the question becomes, which mind are you actually listening to right now? And what would happen if you started paying attention to the one that doesn't draw down your energy? The first step to energy mastery is learning to tell these two minds apart. And this isn't as obvious as you might think. You've been listening to your synthetic mind for so long now that you probably assume all that mental chatter is just you thinking. That's you being smart. That's you thinking things through. You've come to believe that thinking all the time is what people do and that it's normal and even necessary. But it's not. It's one specific type of mental activity, and once you truly realize what it is, you'll wonder how you ever confused it with your actual intelligence. Your synthetic mind has some very distinct characteristics. You'll recognize these. It's chatty, constantly producing commentary, analysis, opinions about everything. It's also repetitive. Notice how the same thoughts, worries, or internal arguments cycle through over and over. That's the synthetic mind activity. It loves to loop. It's also manipulative in a very particular way. Your synthetic mind doesn't just give you information, it tries to convince you of things. It builds cases, it presents evidence, argues with itself, and justifies. It has what you might call different personalities or voices that take various positions. One voice might be the critic, another the defender, another the worrier. They can even argue with each other, creating this whole internal drama that feels very important and real. But here's the telling part. Your synthetic mind is always trying to talk you into or out of something. It's really never neutral. It has an agenda, even when that agenda shifts from moment to moment. You might think it's a great asset, especially if you're intellectually gifted. But no matter how smart you are, if you don't have mastery over this synthetic mind, it will always get you to serve it rather than it serving you. Ask yourself, can you summon it? And can you make it stand down? Probably not. And so the synthetic mind becomes intrusive. It interrupts, demands attention, creates urgency around thoughts that aren't actually useful or important. It's not serving you. You are hosting a synthetic intelligence that uses a lot of energy, and you're allowing it to run at will. And that's not smart. Your synthetic mind is linear and time-bound. It doesn't see things whole. It dissects and manipulates the parts. It starts at one point and makes its way through a process. What's real to your synthetic mind is the past and the future, but it has no root in the present moment. The activity of the synthetic mind creates friction. It's really the best way I can describe it. It's a kind of friction energy. This both excites and taxes the nervous system and the body. It takes a lot of energy to run this system, and it creates byproducts. And one of those is friction. That is a byproduct of all of this thinking, of all of this running of the synthetic mind. And what may seem incomprehensible is that you are addicted to that friction, and you are only willing to go so long without it. And the last thing I'll say about the synthetic mind, and it's something I've said before, but it bears repeating, you believe this is you. You identify with it, even if you claim you don't, even if intellectually you know that you're not your thoughts. I'm sorry, but you do. You identify with them. Individually, maybe not, but as a whole, you identify as the one who is thinking. Now, how familiar are you with your natural mind? Your natural mind operates completely differently. When it communicates, it's direct and simple. No long explanations, no building a case, no trying to convince you of anything. It doesn't tell you why a thing is true. It just tells you that it's true. It might show you an image or highlight a memory or give you a sudden knowing about something. The information just appears. It's clear and complete. There is no how. You just know it. And that knowing is indelible. It's part of you. Your natural mind is also deeply integrated with your body. It might augment your knowing with a sensation, a feeling of expansion or contraction. The synthetic mind is all in your head. Literally, it's verbal, conceptual, disconnected from your body's intelligence. In fact, until you train your synthetic mind, it's often deeply antagonistic to your body's natural intelligence. Your synthetic mind will actively try to undermine your natural intelligence. And here's another way you can easily recognize which mind is operating. Your natural mind doesn't repeat itself. It does not loop. When it gives you information, that's it. Done. It doesn't need to keep explaining itself or trying to convince you because the knowing is complete. And as I said, it just becomes part of you. The knowing isn't external, exogenous. It doesn't go into some database. It's part of you. You and the knowing are one thing, not subject and object. Your natural mind communicates when you need it, and it's quiet when you don't. It doesn't create noise just to make itself known, or because it's bored, or because it wants your attention. It's you, and therefore it doesn't need anything from you. It doesn't take anything from you. Learning to recognize which mind is communicating with you changes everything. Because once you can tell the difference, you have a choice about where you want to place your trust, your attention, and your energy. And you know this isn't a spiritual thing. Or maybe it ends up being a crossover because developing even a little mastery in this area can produce real spillover effects in your spiritual development. But to me, this is just a human thing. If you were able to step back and see this transparently, see what it means to be a human fumbling around life with this crazy, energy-hungry, intense synthetic mind that you don't have any real understanding or control over, it's astonishing to think we're all living in that state and that it's really not necessary. Once you can distinguish between these two minds, you start to understand why life feels so unnecessarily complicated. You're not dealing with one intelligence giving you clear guidance. You're managing a chaotic committee where the loudest member keeps hijacking the meeting. The synthetic mind feels antagonistic because it literally works against your natural system. Think about it. Your natural mind gives you a clear knowing about something, and what happens? Immediately, your synthetic mind starts up with, but what if, or yes, but you should also consider. Because often the natural mind will give you a knowing that is, shall we say, inconvenient. When you get the knowing that you shouldn't marry this person even though you've sent out the wedding invites, or that you shouldn't take this job even though the pay is fantastic, because even though you don't know it yet, your boss is going to end up being a narcissist. It's simple, direct, it's clear, and it's true, but all that can be very inconvenient. And your synthetic mind doesn't miss a beat. It jumps right in and creates doubt where there was clarity, complexity where there was simplicity. And this is why you can have a moment of absolute certainty about a decision and then find yourself second-guessing 5 minutes later. Your natural mind delivered the knowing, and your synthetic mind started undermining it. And because the synthetic mind speaks the language you're used to, words, logic, familiar thought patterns, you assume it's more trustworthy. Here's what happens when you start building your authority. You begin to notice that your natural mind's communications are almost always dead on. They are so accurate. That gut feeling about the person you just met, right. The quiet sense that this isn't the right opportunity, even though it looks fantastic on paper. 6 months later, you find out why. When we label this as intuition, we diminish it. It's not some mystical sixth sense. It's your natural mind. It's your first sense, your innate intelligence. It's not an add-on. It's part of your original human system. Your synthetic mind, meanwhile, creates elaborate scenarios that rarely match reality. It's constantly preparing you for problems that don't happen while missing the ones that do. It spins stories about what other people are thinking that have nothing to do with what other people are actually thinking. It builds entire futures based on current fears that have no bearing on what actually unfolds. And it may seem like I'm demonizing your synthetic mind, but I'm not. I'm simply pointing out that it's a very powerful, resource-hungry system that you have little to no control over. It has a narrow range of useful application, and yet you leave it running and allow it to apply itself to every aspect of your life. The more you practice recognizing this difference between the two minds, the more you realize how much energy you've been wasting to support mental activities that don't benefit you and often compromise your well-being. All that mental spinning, all those internal debates, all that preparation for scenarios that never materialize, all the weird moods it talks you into. It's been running without checks or guardrails, and it's draining your reserves. But here's where it gets interesting. You don't have to fight your synthetic mind or try to shut it down completely. You can start by learning to control your attention and energy. When you notice it starting up its familiar routines, the loops, the convincing, the drama, you can simply shift your attention elsewhere. Your natural mind doesn't need your energy to function, and you don't need to turn it on or go in search of it. It's already there. It's already operating. You just need to stop drowning it out with the synthetic noise. You need to stop calling it intuition or something else that seems mysterious or parapsychological. You need to stop insisting that it justify what it knows. You need to accept that it doesn't care or even register if what it knows isn't convenient. What it cares about is whether it's true for you. It's very common, but also terribly corrosive, to refuse to know the truth because acting on that truth would upset other people. The more you practice listening for and honoring the natural mind, the clearer your connection to your natural intelligence becomes, and the less compelling your synthetic mind's productions appear. And this is real authority, knowing where to place your attention, your energy, and your trust. Once you can recognize the difference and you're building trust in your natural mind, let's talk about what mastery actually looks like. Because this isn't just about having a more peaceful inner experience, though that's frankly an amazing side effect. This is about fundamentally changing how much energy you have available for your actual life. When you're operating primarily from your natural mind, you'll notice something remarkable. You stop getting tired from thinking. That mental exhaustion you assumed was normal, it disappears. Your natural mind processes information without creating friction. It makes decisions without endless deliberation, and it responds to life without needing to analyze every detail first. The synthetic mind, by contrast, is like having a resource-intensive program that you're actively running almost continuously. For most people, the synth rarely recedes into the background. They're constantly engaged with its commentary, analysis, and internal debates. It's consuming energy all day long because you're feeding it your attention nearly every waking moment. Here's what you can start practicing. When you notice your synthetic mind ramping up, instead of engaging with its content, simply redirect your attention to something immediate and physical. That might be your breath, your feet on the ground, the temperature of the air, the energy in your palms. This isn't a relaxation technique. It's a way of switching back to your actual experience of being alive, which is always connected to present moment reality, and it requires no narrative. Your synthetic mind lives in abstract time, rehashing the past, projecting into the future, creating elaborate timelines and scenarios. Your natural mind operates in real time. When you ground yourself in physical reality, you're essentially changing channels back to your native intelligence. Another thing you'll notice as you practice this, your natural mind doesn't need to convince you that it's right. When it gives you information, there's a quality of completion to it. You know without knowing how you know. The synthetic mind, meanwhile, is always building its case, always trying to get you to buy into its version of reality. And as you get more skilled at this, you can actually turn off synthetic mind processes consciously. When you catch it starting one of its familiar loops, you can simply stop, not through force or suppression, but by withdrawing your attention. It's like unplugging a device that was drawing power. The program stops running because it's no longer being fed. This is where the massive energy conservation comes in. All that mental activity that was happening automatically starts to quiet down. You're no longer being talked into being sad, angry, ashamed, or unworthy. You begin to operate from a much more efficient system. Decisions become simpler, clarity becomes your default state, and you have energy left over for things that actually matter to you. The goal isn't to kill off the synthetic mind. It's to stop being driven by it, to have conscious choice about which mind you're operating from. Okay, what do you think about what I've said so far? About the two minds and their different qualities? It's kind of interesting, isn't it? But let's be real for a minute. Who cares? Does any of this really matter to you? Is this just an interesting half hour or so where you consume an intriguing perspective, compare it to other similar teachings you've come across, categorize it, file it away? If you're honest, yeah. And hey, that's fine. There are definitely worse ways to spend a half hour these days, but where does that leave you? You've stuffed some more useless information into your database. Not useless because it has no value, but useless because you won't use it. If you do want to alchemize information into something real, something tangible, but you are a bit overwhelmed and you don't know where to start, I suggest you start exactly where you are. You're often enthralled to your pushy, resource-intensive synthetic mind. It's not hidden, it's not elusive, it's right there on the surface, ever present. And that's great. You don't have to go hunting for it. It's with you all the time. It's with you right now. And you can decide to become curious about it. When you notice it initiating a specific program, maybe an anxiety thought loop or a self-doubt session, instead of feeling oppressed by it or trying to fight it off, just get really curious. Shift your focus from the words being said in your mind to the signature. Pay attention to the qualities, the attributes, the weight, the texture, the tone of this voice. Where is it coming from? Above you? And to the right, is it a little in front of you or more behind you? How fast does it run? Is the voice high or low? It's creating a kind of friction energy. If you pay attention, you can feel it in your body. What does that feel like? This is what it means to be deeply curious about something. When you're curious, you're no longer taking a position for or against. You don't shrink from it. You don't make an enemy of it. You open your perception wide. You wake up and take in all the details so you can see it fully. In this way, you can start to become more familiar with the surface layers of your synthetic mind. Once you know the feel of it, the signature of the synthetic mind, you can easily and immediately identify it. In beginner mode, you just focus on curiosity and getting to know it. Once you get good at that, the next step is to withdraw your focus. But don't get ahead of yourself. That's usually how we get discouraged and give up, because we've jumped to a slightly more advanced practice than we're ready for. So please be patient. There's no rush. The hardest thing about getting to know the synthetic mind is just that you're so used to it running all the time that you actually believe the voice is you, that it represents you. This seems completely normal to you, if you're honest. From my perspective, it's absolutely preposterous, mad. But when you've lived almost your whole life believing the stream of thoughts are you, talking to yourself, then it can be challenging to even know who you would be without them. Sure, you might want to learn how to root out the bad or negative thoughts and retain the rest, but you can't truly conceive that even the neutral or good streams of thought are equally synthetic, use a lot of resources, and ultimately are unnecessary. It's easy to give a lot of attention to the synthetic mind. It's so grabby after all. But just as you need to become deeply curious about the synthetic mind and learn its signature, you also need to do the same for the natural mind. Paradoxically, this can be quite difficult. It seems like it shouldn't be. I mean, it's inbuilt, designed perfectly with your human system. But here's the thing. You've learned to disregard it to the point where you can hardly perceive it anymore. You'll have no trouble perceiving the synthetic mind. It's always yapping at you. But you may have to really slow down and listen in order to distinguish communication from the natural mind. The paradox is that the language used by your natural mind is your mother tongue, your first language, but you may no longer be fluent with it because you've only used your second language, the verbal language of the synthetic mind, for so long. Remember, the natural mind communicates in a complete unit of understanding. It will not explain to you how it knows, the steps or process by which it came to this knowing. And this is the crux of the problem. You've come to expect that your knowledge or understanding of a thing must come via dissection, process, and time. The synthetic mind is linear. It debates, it argues, it has units of fact. It can weave into a mantle of proof. It operates in a world of pros and cons, and it's constantly weighing things. Without process, the synthetic mind can't exist. It can't function. And this is the only way you will accept knowing something. Our whole human society has evolved toward this way of knowing and communicating. It's the only way we consider valid. You will not accept just knowing something immediately, whole, completely, and without process. You won't accept it. You won't accept the natural mind. Just consider this scenario. You meet a woman and you instantly know you should avoid her. I mean instantly, maybe before you've even spoken to her. You see her across the room at a meeting, and before you've even been introduced, your natural mind provides you with a complete understanding that this is a person you should avoid. You can't accept this. It's not okay to just know something like this without a cause, without a set of justifiable reasons. You tell yourself to stop being ridiculous, don't be judgmental. So you finally do cross the room and you're introduced. Guess what? She's perfectly pleasant. There's nothing you can fault her for. But your synthetic mind will jump in and start looking, start coming up with reasons and justifications for why you don't like her. Don't trust her. None of the reasons or justifications will even be valid or relevant. But the important thing here is just that you have reasons. In time, you will find out just how untrustworthy this woman is. You will find out just how true the communication from your natural mind was. You didn't need to refer it to your synthetic mind to be justified. To become familiar with the natural mind, you're going to have to train yourself to pause before automatically jumping to the synthetic mind. Your natural mind has given you a complete knowing. Learn to pause right there, to resist the urge, the habit, the reflex, to immediately abandon this experience of knowing and shift into thinking about it. Learn to say, stay. What does it feel like? You can feel it in your body, in your energy field. Where? Where does it emanate from? Is it spherical or oblong? Does it feel different as it emanates into parts of your body? Can you feel the knowing in the palms of your hands, behind your eyes? Is it different? Is it okay to stop here, to know and let that be enough? How long can you continue knowing without referring it to the synthetic mind to dissect, to argue for or against? How long can you resist? Can you stretch that out a little more? Keep doing this until you become familiar with the signature of your natural mind and recognize it, until you learn how to stay with it instead of immediately jumping off to think about what it has told you, to dissect it, to justify it. Notice that you're not opposing or promoting either system at this point. This is just the point of being a beginner. You're just becoming familiar with their language and signature, so you can recognize reliably which mind is operating, which mind is producing the experience you're having in your internal domain. It's absolutely unfeasible to do this all the time, especially when you're a beginner. If you intend to actually succeed at this and not just dabble, then, as I said before, start small, very small. Start with 1 hour a day where you commit to being curious, not doing anything else, but being curious about which mind is operating. Make it the same hour every day and make sure you're just living your life during that hour. It's not a meditation or contemplation hour. You want to sample your mental activity in the wild, so to speak, in its natural habitat. So let's say you commit to being curious about the mind every day from noon to 1, basically during lunchtime. Some days you'll be having lunch alone, other days you'll be with friends, some days you'll be driving and not having lunch then, and other days you'll be on an airplane. Your life will be happening in all its variety, and all you do is commit to 1 hour, the same hour, of being alert, intentional, and curious about the mind. You can just start there, and you'll know when you're ready for the next level of practice. Another practice that's very easy to start with is to stop and notice anytime you're arguing pros and cons with yourself, trying to make a decision. chances are your natural mind already gave you the knowing, but you won't accept it, so you've referred it to your synthetic mind. When you notice yourself doing this, stop. Drop down into the natural mind, into the body, and see if you can connect with the direct, complete knowing. From there, you can feel your resistance to this knowing. For this beginner part of the practice, there's no need to do anything about the resistance. Just notice what it feels like, that it's there. Let yourself settle into your body, into the knowing. When you are receptive, tell your natural mind to show you. Just say, "Show me," and let the knowing be there. It's just there, complete. It's as though it already exists in your body. Just sit with it. You don't have to do anything except exist with it. And if you've taken the Peerless course, I just want to say yes. Yes, the intelligent boundary that we talk about is part of the natural mind. So if you've been working with the boundary, you'll already be familiar with some of the more advanced aspects of the natural mind. Once you know something, it takes a lot of work to convince yourself that you don't. This is so important, so I'm just going to repeat it, and I want you to really listen to this. Once you know something, it takes a lot of work and energy to convince yourself that you don't. It's strange, but that's what we spend a lot of our energy doing, employing the synthetic mind to create an elaborate mental construct that allows us to forget that we know something. You don't have to search for your natural mind. You just have to stop mistaking the loudest voice for the truest one. Just start with 1 hour a day. Get curious. Learn the texture, the tone, the territory of your internal landscape. And if you want more precise tools to navigate it, this is what I teach. You'll find my newsletter, courses, and other resources at amarastrand.com. I've left the links below. Clarity, it's not a luxury or a spiritual accomplishment. It's your original setting. Let's get back to it. Thanks for being here with me today, and I'll talk to you again soon.